Welcome to Six Tackles with Gus for another week. We're 7 days out from what will be another epic Origin decider. You can see it exclusively live and free on 9 from 7 o'clock next Wednesday. And, of course, we'll have all the lead up over the next week. Big Papa gets his chance at an Origin fairy tale next week. We'll talk about all the storylines coming out of team selections. On the club front, where's the cheese? Brandon Smith likely to debut for South Sydney this weekend, but is it too late to save the Rabbits? Is it time for a Sharkies shake-up? No, says Fred. You like that? Freddy knocks back the Kangaroos coaching gig, surprisingly. NRLW returns a standalone launch to the season tomorrow night down in Cronulla. We've got an Ampol Power Surge. Ask us. We're going to preview the round. I don't know how we're going to fit it all into the next 3 hours. Thanks to Tab for the best time in sport. Tab has the best app in sport. Tab, we're on.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
He's back from the surgeon and he's in the studio. Phil Gould, you well?
Matthew Thompson, how you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah,
How do you pull up?
I'm excellent. I'm good.
Freddie suggested you were having cosmetic surgery last week.
Cosmetic surgery.
Yeah.
Well,
He said you had an eye. Well, actually, I did. I said you had an eye lift. And
It
Freddie
didn't.
said you were vain.
It didn't take. It didn't take if I had plastic surgery. No.
So you had eye surgery a week ago. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing these days. I've always had a long history with my eyes because back when I played back in the 70s, I had 2 detached retinas in my right eye, which were big operations back in the day. But it got to a point where, my vision was severely impaired and I had cataracts and different things going on. So I had to bite the bullet and go and get some surgery. But it's amazing what they do these days. I mean, the surgery itself was amazing. You're kind of conscious all the way through it.
Oh, I'd hate that.
Yeah, you're mildly sedated. Like, I couldn't see anything, but I could hear him talking to me all the way through the surgery.
That's gross.
Yeah, and it was...
Was that disconcerting?
No, it wasn't. No, it was quite relaxing, actually. It wasn't... Yeah, you kind of had some queries going in. Well, how am I going to be awake if you're going to be doing all this to my eyes, But there was sort of like a cataract removal, which was difficult because of the long history with me injuries and that sort of thing, and it took him a while to do that. But I've also had a new lens put in my eye, which, as I understand, they make with a 3D printer.
Oh, man.
Can you believe this?
No, I can't.
And I think some of the surgery... I think he said some of the surgery is done by a robot too. Like, it's kind of like...
Where are we in the world?
It's amazing. See how it plays out. But it's extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary.
Well, I'm pleased that you're seeing clearly.
I'm seeing clearly.
The sun has never shone brighter. Plenty to get through. Let's start with our favourite segment.
Dear, oh, dear, oh.
I don't know whether you even saw the Panthers versus Bulldogs game last Thursday.
Through one eye.
Well, a pretty easy question, I reckon. It was the game of the year.
Well, it was certainly one of the more engaging games, wasn't it? It was, I spoke about it on 100% Footy on Monday night. During the sort of evolution of our club, the Bulldogs over the last few years and trying to get ourselves into a competitive state, we often looked at games being played by the top sides, and the marquee teams of the time were obviously Panthers and Storm in that grand final last year, and we'd talk amongst ourselves about, could we survive in a game like that? How far are we away from playing in games like that? And that's ultimately where you need to get to be able to compete with the best sides. I maintain that winning a premiership, you sort of go through stages with your team about being competitive, about being able to score points, about getting out of the bottom of the ladder and getting yourself up where you're a chance of winning games, where your fans can have something to look forward to every time they go out to play. And that, on your best day, you can win games. On your best day, you might challenge the better teams. But where you want to get to is, and I've said this for a long time, you want to get where you've got the ability to beat your opposition on their best day. Mm-hmm. And that's the real test of winning premierships or being competitive at final times. Not just to win on your best day, but to be able to beat your opponent on their best day. And that's where sort of Panthers and Storm have been for a few years now. And the likes of the Roosters and Broncos and those teams. And, you get yourself into a position where you can go into every game with confidence and you'll take them on. And when you get down to finals, you're going to have to beat them at their best. You're going to have to beat your best, but you're going to have to beat them at their best. And we would sit back and we'd look at games and say, well, we're not near there yet. We're a long way away from that. We're a long way away. But I think Thursday night gave a number of our players a lot of confidence that, okay, they're getting closer towards being able to compete on the big stage with good sides. Now, that doesn't guarantee anything into the future. A lot will depend on how they come out of that game last Thursday and go again. But I've said a couple of times this year that Panthers, whilst they've been struggling down lower, have produced 2 or 3 of the best performances I've seen all season. There was a game where they belted the Roosters and a game where they belted the Broncos. And again the other night they were completely at their best, and they went toe for toe. To go 80 minutes, concede 1 try from a charge down and still be fighting there at the back end of the game with a chance to pull it out in the last play of the game was great. It was disappointing to lose, and I think there was a lot of learnings out of that game. There were, they're masters at that type of game. When you take them on at that sort of game, they're the best at it. So it was a really good guide for our blokes and gives them confidence of what finals football will look like. We've still got to get there yet, but a lot of confidence out of that game and knowing that we've still got some players to come back. Hopefully we can learn from that and move on.
You watch the game and you think this is an amazing spectacle. You have all the analytics and the numbers through the GPS and stuff like that with the intensity.
Yeah,
Did that reflect that?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it was one of the best, highest rating of the year, or certainly probably was the highest rating of the year. But there are some other things too, like the football and the mechanics and the ball in play, and Bulldogs have prided themselves on wanting to be a really fit side and a side that can go the distance and not give up, and that's what they've been doing. And but I thought there was some real lessons to be learned from the game. I felt that when we were behind 6-2, I kind of felt like we looked comfortable, like we were comfortable being uncomfortable, but we were comfortable in the grind and we were comfortable going toe-to-toe with them. And then when the try occurred, when the charge down occurred and we got behind 8-6, our demeanour changed a little bit. It became a little bit more desperate and a little bit more, we need to score again. And once that happened, we came up with a few errors and we played into Panthers' hands because that's what they do. They just wear sides down and wear their patience down and force them into error. And it was that was the difference. That was for me, and I haven't listened to what the coaches reviewed, but for me, that was really the learning out of the game, was the difference a little bit in our demeanour when we were just in front and when we were just behind. And that's crucial. I remember talking to a couple of the Melbourne Storm players after the final last year. They were beaten 14-6 by the Panthers in that epic grand final game, but they never really felt like they were going to win. Like it was kind of like they felt like they took Penrith on too much at their style of football and didn't play enough of their own. I don't know. I don't know that you're going to beat Penrith unless you can go toe-to-toe with them and beat them at their own style. You've just got to outlast them, and they're the masters at it, and it was they were great. But our blokes, really, really proud of our blokes. They did a good job. Disappointing to lose, it always is, but you can learn from your losses. There's no risk about that.
So there's 2 schools of thought when it comes to a great game, what 2 people like. Andrew Johns is one of these people. He loves the shootouts. He loves the attacking football. Lots of points, close game, but lots of points. But I think back to the 3 games over the last 12 months that have stood out to me. Origin decider, grand final, and the other night. Low scoring, but you're on the edge of your seat the whole time because one play can change the whole game.
Yeah. Well,
they're the ones that I love.
That's the beauty of our game. It comes in all shapes and sizes, and there are some teams in our competition that can't play those sort of 8-6, 6-4 type games.
There's not a lot of them.
No, that's where you probably need to get to win premierships. I've always had this theory: if you're down the bottom of the ladder and you want to improve your position on the ladder, you've got to have the ability to score points. You've got to have the ability to score points. And then if you want to be regular top 8, you've got to have the ability to stop points. Defence then starts on to take more focus. And if you want to win competitions, defence is primary. I think there's a statistic over the last however many years, the top 1 or 2 defensive sides in the competition generally win the competition. Now, I maintain it's because they're also great in attack. I think my theory has always been the key to a great defence is great attack, and how you give the ball back to the opposition, where and when, and how you control the play. And that puts less and less pressure on your defence, which New South Wales needs to learn. We'll talk about that with the Origin later. But, so there are different types of games. I don't mind games where there are plenty of tries, as long as the defence is competitive. I don't like games where defences are just deplorable and the tries come soft, or there are multiple tries from kicks and, all those types of things. You can have really exciting shootouts. You can have a team lead. We've had games this year where teams have led by 16 and got run down, and then they come again to win. And they're exciting for the fans and particularly for the kids. And you see all the acrobatics and the wingers scoring tries, and that's wonderful entertainment. But those really tough, hard fought, and it wasn't as though those sort of games, that game 8-6 or 6-4 or 4-2. They don't have to be boring.
No.
There's some brilliant football and courageous defence. Like, that's the key to it. There were a number of try saves from both sides the other night in that game.
I think back to the Origin decider last year. We didn't have a try for over an hour. But the footy was just elite.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can be absorbed by both. But, different tastes for different people. And entertainment, kids, young people probably don't understand the grinding, hard-nosed, low-scoring football. They like to see the tries and the try celebrations and the fast people leaping high and running fast and flick passes and chip kicks and all those sorts of things. And they're skills in our game that we celebrate. But if you want to win competitions and you want to win big games and origins, there's got to be that hard-nosed, grinding, tough, resilient, win at all cost type attitude where you give nothing and you give nothing away. That's... I love those sort of games, but I'm entertained by also. I just don't like games that are either completely one-sided or where defences aren't just, I lose respect for the defensive part of the game if they're not working right or they're not trying hard enough.
So there's the defensive grit of Penrith versus Bulldogs, and then there's the attacking shoot, or the attacking blitz style of football of the Dolphins. So my question is, can the Dolphins finish in the 4?
Well, anything is possible. I mean, they've got the capability of not losing another game in the home and away rounds. I mean, that's just thing. But you talk about that game the other night, 50-28, wasn't it?
It was 13 tries.
Yeah, and 50-28. I maintain if you're good enough to score 50, then you're good enough to stop your opposition from scoring as much as that. I mean, if your dominance is so much physically and skill wise, then you should be applying that in defence as well. And I thought there were some really poor moments in defence, particularly from both sides, really. But that sort of game, whilst it's entertaining and it's all skill, and we see the fast people running fast, and there's plenty of open football, it's entertaining to watch. I can watch it. I'm not a tennis fan, but I can watch a game of tennis if it's entertaining, and they're all shot making and all that sort of thing. So, I can sit and watch a game like that, but if I was coaching either side, I'd be devastated. I don't think I could sit through that and feel as though that, that team represents what I believe football should look like. The Dolphins, I've been saying to you for some time, are a serious football team.
They've scored 50 points in 3 of their last 4 games.
Well, and sometimes that can erode away at your resilience in defence. Sometimes because you've got such an ability to score points comfortably that you probably don't apply yourself in defence. I've seen them apply themselves in defence. That's the difference.
That was against the Dogs.
Yeah, they just chose not to do it the other night simply because they felt as though they could score as many as they wanted whenever they wanted. And, that happens week to week. You can't be great all the time. You can't be ruthless all the time. But we've seen the Melbourne Storm, run out to big leads and concede second half scores and that as well. So, yeah, I think that the Dolphins are a serious football team. I would suggest they seriously scare everyone else in the competition when they come to play them, because they've just got such tremendous skill, and their attacking game, the halfback is getting better and better by the week, and they've got such speed, and they can frighten you. You can defend well, but there are some things they do you can't defend against, and you can just concede points even though you defend well. They've got a manner of scoring points in all sorts of ways, so they're a really good football team.
Cody Nicaraema's a big loss. Round 24 with a hammy.
Yeah, he is. I'd imagine Sean O'Sullivan comes into that, and Sean's a really smart footballer. He'll know the Cody Nicarima role. He's probably not as fast as Cody, but...
Or Avarillo.
Maybe Avarillo. Yeah, because they've got some others coming back, haven't they? They've got some options there, but, Cody's Cody, and Cody...
He seems to complement Katoa.
Oh, brilliantly. He's a really smart little player, Cody. I got to know him pretty well in my short time at the Warriors and watched him sort of evolving as a player. I've always been a fan. But they'll get by without Cody. I'm not worried about the Cody thing. They've got enough points in them to beat anyone. You know, and they have got the ability to apply themselves in defence. That's the thing. I just think that their try-scoring ability and the way they had South the other night, they felt like they could probably score any way they wanted and just started to apply themselves when they had the ball. But they can apply themselves without the ball. They're a serious team, mate.
So my question was, can they make the 4? I'm a convert with you about this bye thing. Can we just get rid of the byes?
Get rid of the byes.
How confusing is it?
Get rid of the byes.
Because the Dolphins are in 8th on 18 points. They've got 8 wins. The Warriors are on 24 points in 4th with 10 wins, so they're 2 points adrift. So the Warriors I'll get to that in a minute. They've got an issue with Metcalf, but they've only had one bye, the Dolphins. So for all intents and purposes, they're on 20 points. So they'd have to overcome a 2-game deficit to make the 4. I mean, if they make the 4,
all you do is look at the number of games they've won. That's all you have to do. So,
can we just get rid of the points for the byes?
We don't need.
It's driving us mad.
We don't need points for the byes. You really don't.
It just drives everyone crazy.
Yeah. So Raiders are way out in front. They're 13 wins. Then follow Bulldogs 11. Then Storm and Warriors are on 10. Broncos are on 8. Dolphins are on 8. Sharks are on 8.
Yes.
Right?
So
they've got Sharks lifted as 10th here. Well, they're not 10th. Right?
So for the sake of the exercise, they're actually, 6th or 7th?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th.
Okay.
Yeah, they're 7th. And where they've got Panthers listed as 7th, well, Panthers are outside the 8 on wins. They've got a win and a draw. That draw is going to be very, very important, or it's going to to be very costly down the track.
I think it's going to be costly.
Well, I don't know. If they keep playing the way they played the other night, they mightn't lose too many more.
That's true.
And I think I said this earlier in the year when they were actually running last, and I said, well, if they can win 4 of their next 8 and then win their last 8, they'll be there. That's just how the competition works at the moment. And they've got the ability to string wins together, and you can see the cream rising to the top. All of a sudden, Broncos are up there, Roosters are up there, Panthers are up there, Sharks are there. So, all the usual suspects will be there when we come to September, I have no doubt. But yes, get rid of the points for the byes. We don't need them.
Just get rid of them.
It's ridiculous.
Do you know what it is? It's because if your team's not going real well, you can hang your hat on. You got a bye coming up where you got to get 2 points.
Well, I'm sick of James Bracey saying that. He said they've got 2 byes left. That's 4 extra. I said, but everyone gets them. You've got to look at the number of wins that they've had. Stop worrying about
James loves a bye.
Points for a bye. Or this is a 4-point game because we get 2 points for the bye next week. Well, everyone gets 2 points for the bye. That's
because he's a director of the Bears now, so he knows when they come into the comp, they're going to get at least 6 points.
I try not to look at the ladder. I don't, we just day by day, game by game, that's the way you treat it. But if you look at the ladder, it'll drive you crazy. And particularly people commentating on the ladder. People saying Rabbitohs are running 16th. They're not. Right? They've had 6 wins. So they're in front of Tigers and Eels for a start, and Titans. And 6 wins is Dragons, Cowboys and Knights. Now, Cowboys have actually got a draw, so Cowboys are in front of all of those. Yeah. Dragons have had 6 wins, 8 losses and 3 byes. So they're nowhere near the 8 at the moment.
No Luke Metcalf, no Warriors Premiership.
No, I don't know about that. I don't know about that because they've got a very good yip player in Tamare Martin who, I've always liked Tamare, and he's been playing reserve grade New South Wales Cup football, and he's been on the bench for the first grade side. I think he's very capable. I think he'll be right once he gets a couple of regular NRL games under his belt. Luke Metcalf was going extremely well. Warriors have just had a little bit of a mid-season patch at the moment, and I think the loss of Barnett for them is far more important. I think that Tamare Martin can give them the direction and the kicking game that they need. Not sure who'll take over the goal kicking there.
Adam Pompey's a goal kicker, isn't he?
Adam Pompey. Adam Pompey will probably be the goal kicker. But, Warriors started the season with a loss, then went on a really good winning run. They've just had a couple of hiccups the last few weeks, but they're still well entrenched up there, and they'll get by that. I think the Barnett loss is bigger than the Metcalf loss. I think they can cover Metcalf. I think Barnett's one that they might struggle to cover. They've got some really great dynamic young forwards there, but experience as we get down to the back end of the competition is always important, and the loss of Barnett was crucial. But I'm not writing the Warrior off.
Well, let me read you their draw home.
Yeah, they've got a tough draw. They've got a tough draw.
Well, actually, I mean, they're all tough draws, but this is one of the most favourable. Yeah. Tigers, well, we got the bye this week. There's 2 points. Tigers, Newcastle, Titans, Dolphins. They play Canterbury. Then they got the Dragons, the Titans, Parramatta, Manly. It's a pretty good draw.
Yeah.
If they could finish in the 4, that's big for them.
I think Raiders are very similar with their draw.
Well, the Raiders have been amazing given the travel they've done and the fact that they've only had 1 week off.
Yep. Well, they've played 16 games, only had 3 losses. Bulldogs have had 3 losses, but they've only played 14 games. Conversely, they've had 11 wins out of the 14. So, yeah. So I look more at the wins and losses rather than the points on the table. And then you got to go to points differentials and for and against, which I don't know that they're going to play that much of a part this year. But a lot of work to do for teams down the bottom if they want to get up into that 8. There's It's far from decided, though. I think I said to you a few weeks ago, this ladder, as it was like only 4 or 5 weeks ago, I said, could flip on its head very, very quickly towards the back half of the season. And it's actually doing that at the moment. But the cream's rising to the top. Broncos, Roosters, Panthers are starting to make their presence felt. Sharks have hit a little bit of a low-pressure zone, but 8 and 8. I think it'll be positive for them for the rest of the year, so see how they go.
Big Papa's selection could be the difference next week.
Well, I think it's an inspired choice for a couple of reasons. I still don't think, even though they won Game 2, I don't think they solved their issues in Game 2 with their selection. So out of winning, they've still seen the reason to make changes, which I think is smart. They've actually been very honest in their own self-appraisal there of how things went. And Papali'i, sometimes you just go on. There are 2 things. There's never a bad time to bring experience into Origin, and he is extremely experienced. And he will welcome this opportunity just to have a one-off Origin tilt rather than a 3-game series and backing up for clubs and all that. So they've got him through to the last game, and he brings a wealth of experience. He brings command and respect up front. He obviously brings his ability and his robust nature of playing the game, but. The football gods are smiling on him at the moment. He had that milestone game down in Canberra the other day where he scored a couple of tries and kicked a goal.
And flushed his goal.
Yeah, and I don't know, sometimes you ride with some players that are in really good space at this time. And, we all know the football gods are Queenslanders. They love Queensland. And his Queensland the football gods are favouring him at the moment. They're really, So I think it's an inspired choice. I think it will be a welcome addition to the squad. I think it'll give a lot of those Queensland forwards a lot of confidence. And Queensland still, they didn't get their start right in Game 2, even though they won. They were aided by the penalty count and the possession, and they were also aided by Newcastle, by New South Wales. New South Wales were just terrible. New South Wales were awful in that first half. I mean, for an Origin performance, it was awful. They shot themselves in the foot so many times with ill discipline, with poor ball control. The game started off pretty much like Game 1 did, where New South Wales defended a couple of sets, then went down the other end pretty comfortably, scored a try and led 6-0. And honestly, I think that softened them. I think that they thought, oh, well, here we go again.
It looked like that.
Yeah, that's, here we go again. And then Queensland got this run of possession brought on by New South Wales mistakes and brought on by the penalty count. And the penalty count started to run against them. And then what we saw, where we didn't see it in Game 1, was New South Wales had to defend their line in back-to-back sets and for a period of time. We didn't have to see a lot of that in Game 1. And I thought they were totally unprepared for it. I thought they defended their line poorly. I was actually sitting very close to that goal line on the sideline working for Channel 9. So I was sitting down on the sideline virtually at the New South Wales end in the first half.
Yeah, it was like Swiss cheese. They pull them apart.
Yeah, so I was kind of behind New South Wales when they were at Queensland's end of the field. And when we went down there were so many opportunities, and then Luai put that kick through and Toa scored. I said, oh, well, they won't be losing because you can just see there are too many points on offer here. For the next 30 minutes, they never got down that end of the field. And at their own end, I was just astonished by the lack of cohesion and connectivity and togetherness on their own goal line, and even astonished about the lack of noise I was hearing. I wasn't hearing a great deal of communication, and it was kind of when a couple of tries were scored and they just looked at each other in bewilderment at what had happened. So I don't know that they'd really prepared themselves for that part of the game, and maybe the early try softened them a little bit. Maybe they just got overconfident and thought, well, here we go again, and Queensland got that run of possession, got to the front, and then bravely defended themselves. Now, the second half was a complete flip around, and for New South Wales to score those tries in that weather, under that pressure, and to get themselves back in contention, had they kicked their goals, they still win the game. So they played badly in the first half and still should have won the game.
Well, deplorable in the first half.
Yeah, the Cleary try should have been a try. I mean, our bunker is way over the top with that. Don't start me on all that obstruction stuff. Our bunker is way over the top with that stuff. But the Cleary try is a try. And if that's a try, and New South Wales play that way in the second half, they win comfortably. If they kick their goals, they win. So Queensland didn't solve their problems from game 1 to game 2. They were better because they had to be, and they were down in the series. The possession and the run of possession and penalties brought Harry Grant and Munster into the contest, and New South Wales defended their line poorly. So you need to be prepared for both ends of the field in Origin. You know, most of the game's playing between the 20-metre zones and, work it up and kick and work it up and kick and work it up and kick. But there are going to be times where you have to defend your goal line, and the way 6 agains are given these days and the amount of time you spend on your own goal, you can spend 6 or 7 minutes on your goal line defending back-to-back-to-back sets the whole time. You need to prepare yourself for that part of the game. As much as you prepare yourself for the attacking end of the field where you get similar sort of possession at their end. So New South Wales just looked unprepared for the goal line defence in game 2.
Why would they be not prepared for that, given that's the cornerstone of Origin?
Well, that's the conundrum. That's where they let themselves down. And that I would say that physically they probably thought they were prepared. They'd probably practiced it. They'd probably talked about it. They'd probably watched on video. They hadn't seen a lot of the Queensland attack from game 1 because there wasn't a lot of Queensland attack from game 1. And if you remember, New South Wales defended them with 12 men for quite a period there too. So there would have been an underlying confidence that, well, we've seen everything they've got. They've made some changes, but it doesn't look like it's going to be any different. What was different was the amount of possession they got at their end and Harry Grant and Munster coming into their own, and Munster with the captaincy and forcing himself on the play. And Harry Grant and Munster, they're champion playmakers. And you gave them enough possession at their end, and they just pulled them apart. And it wasn't structured play or plays. It was just,
it was easy.
It was poor from New South Wales. Brilliant from Queensland, but poor from New South Wales. They just didn't prepare themselves, although they might have thought they were prepared for it, but they weren't. They weren't prepared to dig in and roll their sleeves up on their goal line, or they weren't prepared for Harry and Munster to have that amount of possession. I think the first try of Origin 2 softened New South Wales. It softened their attitude, and it softened their resilience, and all of a sudden they weren't applying themselves defensively the way they should. And then they got a little bit in panic mode there and come up with some errors with the ball and didn't complete their sets, and that played into Queensland's hand. Queensland got a roll on and got it's Origin. You're not playing duds. It's not club football. You're playing the best in the game. Mm-hmm. You give them enough possession and enough time, they can hurt you, and that's what they did. The try off the kick across over, getting over the top of Brian Tyler is always a danger. The best defence is keep them away from your end of the field. Put some pressure on the kicker. We didn't even do that. They just seemed to be able to play the way they wanted. The second half was completely different. I mean, Queensland, we could have scored another 3 or 4. Should have scored another 3 or 4. Had it been dry, probably would have. So Queensland had to make changes, and they've made some changes, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I think the Hamaso selection at fullback is inspired as well.
You've got to get him into the game.
Well, I was watching I watched the last couple of Dolphins games, and he's frightening at the back. I actually sent a text message to Peter Sharp, our recruitment manager. We trade a few text messages while we're watching games. I said, he's frightening, the fullback. I said, you'd nearly have to pick him.
I don't think you can fit him in your salary cap.
Eh?
I don't think you can fit him in your salary cap.
No, not for us. But he's absolutely frightening. And and that's the thing that always scares me. Now, he's completely different to Reece Walsh, and I can see what Billy's thinking here. He's thinking his playmakers are up front. Munster and Harry Grant have shown that if they can get possession, and Dearden, he's an attacking sort of halfback. What I don't need is an over-enthusiastic, fullback chancing his arm, trying to prove that he's an Origin player at the back there, where Reece Walsh is at this stage of his career. What I need is someone at the back there who can take advantage of what happens up front. So if Papali'i gives us a little bit of go forward and the forwards can do their job, and then Munster and Grant and Dearden can get enough possession and take them on, we just need them to pop a pass or make a half break, and Hamaso is going to take it all away. Whereas if he brings Reece Walsh in, who likes to get the ball out the back and fly around the sides and grab a kick and throw long passes and, step, Reece Walsh feels compelled to be a playmaker, and he feels compelled to create. Hamaso is not going to create anything. Hamaso is going to take advantage of the creation. And I can really see what Billy was thinking there, and I applaud him for it, because that's all he needs. He needs someone who can ice the big moments and the chances that are going to be created by Harry Grant and Munster. That's their strength. Grant and Munster, and to a lesser extent Dearden, that's their strength. So I don't need Reece Walsh, speculating and coming up with errors or feeling as though he's the major playmaker of the team. There'll be a time and place for that at another time. So I think he's brought Hamaso in, realising what he saw in Game 2, that if Grant and Munster can get enough possession, they can create enough chances for us, for Hamaso to be the difference and take it all the way. So I think that's an inspired choice as well.
So Billy said, I've had this sort of up my sleeve for a little while now, calling the big fella out of retirement, which made me think, it's a decider, so probably the question probably answers itself, but, he could have pulled the pin last game and brought him back. And you did the same thing with Freddy. You had him up your sleeve for a little while. Like, when do you know? This is probably Billy's last chance, because he's likely going to go to England, the big fella. But he could have brought him back at the start of the series. He could have brought him back for Game 2. Like, when do you know? And how do you resist the temptation to go early?
Yeah. There's an old saying I heard years ago, it's in your most important battle, throw your last man in. It's kind of like you've got to treat it as a 3-game series, and I've always felt that way. Sometimes you've got things up your sleeve that you don't go to, and the situation doesn't arise, but it was there if you needed it. And it's just a gut feel, and you've got to trust it. You'll have 2 or 3 different scenarios that you can anticipate could occur, and you've got to have a reaction to it. It's like sitting there in the coach's box, and you've got 4 reserves on the sideline, and you might have a plan with your interchange, but that plan goes out the window in the first 10 minutes. So you've then got to think on your feet and go from where you are. Yeah, and I used to sit home, as I said to you, in representative teams, I virtually picked my bench first so that I could cover every scenario, and I would sit there thinking, if this player went down, what would I do? If that player went down, what would I do? If the score was this, what would I do? If we were 6 points in front with 10 minutes to go, who do I want out there? If we're 6 points behind with 10 minutes to go, who do I want out there? How do I manipulate my interchange so that I can help the team from the sideline if I'm needed to do so? And the same goes with selections. And, Papali'i, could he have got through a 3-game Origin series and still play his club football, and how would he be by Game 3? Well, he'd retired mentally from representative football because club football was going to take precedence. But to now just a one-off like this, incredible. And I think it's an inspired choice, and I think it'll give the team a lift as well. He hasn't rested on his laurels. I could see on his face at the end of Game 2, Billy, that he was thinking right, that that wasn't great. I know we've won. I'm glad we've won. The series is squared, but we need to think again about Game 3 if we want it. They have to improve to win Game 3. And he's at least given himself a chance because he hasn't rested on the laurels of a winning scoreline. He's seen that there needed to be some change there.
All right, there you have it. Should we chat on Monday? I think we should, because we're not going to be able to do next Wednesday because the game's...
Didn't we just do an Origin preview?
Well, a short one. I know I've threatened to get a special guest for an Origin preview all series, and I've failed. But I'm very confident that I'm going to have a very special guest to talk to us next Monday. Very special. Maybe the most special guest ever.
Well, what's that?
No one knows more about special guests than I do.
Right.
So we'll do it before you do 100% footy, because the punters love us.
Right.
Is that all right? Well, I'll get an Origin legend. So we can talk about the game, but you can banter with the Origin legend.
Banter with the Origin legend.
Yeah.
That's a clue.
What do you mean? There's a million Origin legends.
Yeah, but banter is another word.
Well, you know them. You coach them.
Yeah.
I just hope he doesn't brush me, because a lot of people do. Now, before we move on, so social media has its pitfalls, but one thing that it does have, it tosses up some gold. And there's a social media site called the Winfield Cup. So as the name would suggest, they put out old retro stuff. And they've got hold of a lot of old Archive 9 clips. So yesterday I saw, remember like when 9 first started doing like the team cards, but, you know, they had the photos of the players and, you know, like they sort of really dressed it up. They did one from Game 2 1992. So, you know, they showed the teams and what. And I looked at the teams and I thought, I reckon this would have to be, man for man, the two best Origin lineups ever. So you obviously you coached the Blues.
We got beat 5-4, I think, didn't we? Alfie Langer kicked a field goal. 1992.
5-4 Game 2, Lang Park.
Game 2, Lang Park, yep. In the wet, rained.
Your team.
That was the game with the kicking duel.
It was too.
It was about a dozen kicks, yeah.
And that was when he used to use the yellow Summit ball in Queensland.
Yeah.
And the Steedon in Sydney. How weird.
Weird. The Queensland ball, yeah. It was hard to kick.
Why did they do that? Queenslanders. Andrew Eddinghausen.
Well, they didn't tell us. They trained with it all week. We didn't.
Well, they didn't tell you.
No. Queensland give you
How are
nothing.
you allowed to do that?
Yeah. It was very different back in the 90s. Very different.
It's like using the Duke's ball for a game and training with a kookaburra.
Yeah.
So Andrew Eddinghausen, Graham Mackay, Rod Wishart, Brad Fittler, Paul McGregor, Laurie Daly, Ricky Stewart, Lazarus, Elias, Harrigan, Siren and Cartwright, Clyde, Steve Carter, Craig Salvatore, Brad Mackay, David Gillespie. What a team. Queensland, Shearer, Hancock, Meninga, Coyne, Brunker, Peter Jackson, Alan Langer, Martin Bella, Steve Walters, Gavin Allen, Bob Lidner, Gary Larson, Billy Moore, Kevin Walters, Trevor Gilmeister, Darren Smith and Mike McLean. There can't have been two better Origin teams ever picked.
Very hard.
How good.
Very hard fought. That was my first series.
Yeah.
The first series. We won in Sydney. I think we won 13-6 or something. I can't remember, 14-6 or something like that.
14-6.
14-6. And then we got beaten 5-4 in Game 2. And we came to Sydney and we might have won 16-6 or something like that.
16-4.
16-4, yeah.
Do you know, here's a trivia, who played halfback for you in the first game?
John Simon.
He did.
Yeah.
Who was the Queensland coach?
Wally Lewis?
Nope.
No, the bloke from New Zealand.
Yes.
Coach in Manly. Yeah, I can see.
Graham Lowe.
Graham Lowe, yeah. Graham Lowe.
Oh, they were the golden days of Origin.
Yeah.
I was a kid then. But how good are those teams?
She was bring back the biff there, baby.
Was it on? Was there many Blues in 92? I can't remember.
Oh, yeah.
What a forward pack.
It was physical. It was brutal.
What a pack.
Absolutely brutal.
Lazarus, Elias, Harrigan, Siren and Cartwright, Clyde.
Like Game 3, 16-4, like it sounds close, 12 points by today's standards, but it wasn't. We were really good that night. And Game 1, we had a number of injuries. I think we scored first and then we lost Clyde, we lost Daly, all injured in the first half. I think we were down. Craig Salvatore had to play a long time in that game. And I think, and I remember John Simon, Ricky Stewart came into camp. It was my first Origin series. And Ricky Stewart came in, he had a slight hamstring complaint. And I had an opinion of John Simon. I had an opinion of the way we needed to play the game, and I knew John Simon could do it. He was only young at the time. He was playing with Illawarra. But he had a big boot on him, and he was a good defender. And
Big boot. He used to belt it.
yeah, and he came in and played for us that night, and we squeaked out a win, and then we went to Queensland, and we were beaten 5-4. Ricky Stewart had a couple of missed field goals to level the score. Alan Langer kicked one late, and then in Sydney we were full strength for Sydney, and we got them.
That first game was the famous game where Benny Elias's mum Barbara came on the field and kissed him when he was covered in blood.
He was covered in blood, yeah.
Oh, they were the days. That's why we love Origin. Gus, the Sharks have lost 4 of their last 5, and the win was the shaky one against the Dragons. They got flogged 30-6 on the weekend. They were in the game, actually. Like, it was 12-4 after half-time. Freddie said last week, in your chair, it's time to change. He suggested Nico should go to fullback. There's a case that Kennedy's been all right. Like, maybe Nico has to go. Well, he's been steadfast, Fitzy. He's not changed the structure of his team. Is he getting to a point where he needs to?
Yeah, it's hard to answer. I mean, we can all sit as commentators and have an opinion from the outside looking in. I don't know what's happening internally with them. According to all media reports, and you can divide by 2 and take away 10 there, they all sat around and had the crisis meeting last week and the heart-to-heart and the honesty sessions, et cetera, which we do every week. Every week we have an honest appraisal of our performances, and every team does it. It's when you're losing, suddenly they get counselled as crisis meetings. Everyone loves a good crisis meeting. But I thought their performance against the Storm was good. I thought it was much improved on what I'd seen in the previous weeks. And the Storm just found a way. You know, they scored an early try, and then there wasn't much in it. And then I thought, gee whiz, Cronulla are fighting their way back into this. Scored a try, and then, you know, there was just a couple of the tries from the Bombs where Oli Katoa chased those balls and jumped over the top of Kennedy. And I thought for 30-6, it was no real reflection on where Cronulla was. But what I did see was signs of Cronulla. Here we go again. There was kinds that it kind of went, you know, like we've tried our backsides out and look what's happening. Look at the scoreboard. And then I think the scoreboard got into their head, and Melbourne were just too relentless for them. And Melbourne can do that. Melbourne can accumulate points out of nothing sometimes. They've got so many ways to score points. And it was kind of the wrong team to be playing on that day. They needed to play a game where, you know, they'd have won a lot of games the way they played on the weekend with their effort levels. They just got frustrated by the better team, the Storm, who at home are extremely hard to beat. I don't think they're far away. What's been confusing is that they haven't been affected by Origin and that they've been beaten some games where opposition teams were. I think the Roosters had a lot of players out and beat them comfortably there a couple of weeks ago. So that then lends yourself to what's going on. Why isn't the team functioning as well as it is? And then you start looking at the body language between players and communication on the field and what we call connectivity, or how connected they are in big moments. And you know, I think it's a confidence issue at the moment. I think they've just you don't lose your ability. You lose your ability to think properly. And I just don't think they're handling the thought process as well at the moment. I think it's a very, very talented football team on their day. I still think they can beat anyone. They're still on 8 wins. Like, they're running 5th. It's not as though they've fallen off the face of the earth. They're still on 8 wins.
Well, they can salvage it, definitely.
Yeah.
But their defence, round 12, they got beat 42-16 by the Roosters.
Yeah.
Round 14, the Warriors beat them 40-10 at home.
Yep.
They trailed the Dragons, was it 18-6?
Yep.
They won 30-18. They led Brisbane 28-12 and lost 34-28. Then they conceded 30 points and scored 6 against Melbourne. So their defence has dropped off a cliff. Yeah,
the defence is the thing. So they've on points 366. They probably rank in the top 4 or 5 on 366. But 370 against is unlike Cronulla. Unlike Cronulla. And they've been opened up in various ways in recent weeks, which I just haven't seen from them before. Now, what's causing that? It's not one thing, but there is an overriding feeling that they've kind of got down on themselves a little bit. They're looking for something to snap them out of it when There's no cavalry coming here. There's no one going to come and do it for them. They have to do it themselves, and they just need to dig in for that one game and get it done. And I think I thought it was last week. I could see signs of it against the Melbourne Storm. They were just playing the wrong team on the wrong day. They were just playing Melbourne in Melbourne on the day where they were trying to turn it around. And I don't think the scoreboard was a reflection of their efforts. I think perseverance is still the key. I think the coach is holding his nerve. I think he's got to trust them. And they just, it can all be turned around in one performance. I think they had the attitude to turn it around on the weekend. They just ran into the wrong team. They ran into the Storm. They'd have probably beaten most other teams from what I saw. Mind you, they've got to back up and do it again now, and the rumblings are there, and people are starting to critique them and pull them apart, and whether individuals are going to listen to the coach or listen to the coaches that are on the outside or listen to everything else that's the noises around. They've just got to, we call it a circle of trust. They've just got to circle the wagons and trust themselves and trust in their own ability and trust in their teammates and pull it all together and grind out a win, get a win. That's really what they need to do. I thought they tried on the weekend. They just ran into the wrong team.
Have a guess who they're playing after the bye?
I don't know.
Dolphin.
Well, that'll be a good test.
What?
It'll be a good test because, Dolphin will give you their chance. Dolphin will give you a chance. South scored 28 against them the other day. And they've lost, as you say, they've lost Nicarima and there'll be some changes. But Cronulla, they've had 8 wins, mate. They've had 8 wins. It's better than, 2/3 of the competition at the moment. So they haven't fallen off the face of the earth. They had a lot of travel in the early part of the year. You're talking about Brad Fittler and talking about Nico Hines. Nico Hines is always sort of the lightning rod there for when people want to criticise the Sharks or what have you. Mind you, he's also the first one to get praised when they're going really well because it's usually on the back of his creativity and his what have you. So they just need to come together a little bit. They just look a little distracted and a little lacking in confidence and cohesion, and they've just got to dig in and get it done. They've got the ability to win games. They've got as much talent in that side as any side in the competition. So I'm certainly not writing them off, and I don't think there needs to be any panic at all.
When you take the big money, you're the first one that comes under the spotlight.
Well,
and it's not a personality.
It doesn't
thing.
matter what role you play in this game. If you're not prepared to have people listen or to talk about you, to lie about you, to misrepresent you, to criticise you, then you're in the wrong game. It's going to happen, and you've got.
Are you talking about players or media?
Well, everyone, anyone involved at any level in this game. If you're not ready for people to talk about you, to lie about you, to misrepresent you, to criticise you, to unfairly criticise you, then you're in the wrong game because it's going to happen. It is going to happen. And you can scream from the rooftops. No one's going to listen. So you've just got to put it out of your mind and you've got to get on with your job.
Ampol Power Surge time, brought to you by Ampol, powering Australia's own sporting nation. Gus, your top 3 this week. Gus's top 3 favourite places to watch the footy.
Favourite places?
Top 3 favourite places. Well, no, you're going to say a couch. 3. Yeah. I don't think that qualifies. The top 3 favourite stadiums to be at to watch the footy.
I got a great movie theatre at home.
I know you do. I've been in it many years ago.
Yeah.
Have you got your golf simulator in there yet?
No, I was thinking of doing it.
Oh, you got to.
Yeah.
There's companies everywhere doing that now.
Yeah. I keep looking them up online.
Yeah.
I was thinking of turning the garage into one, but I don't think the missus would be happy about that.
Well, when you do that, let me know.
I mean, yeah, I'm trying to find a room where I could put a golf simulator. I was thinking of putting one in the backyard.
But you could do it in the theatre room, because I think you could just have the screen come down, couldn't you?
No, he might be able to.
You could, like a multifunction.
I'll have to move all the chairs out of the way. No, I think I could do it.
What about a putting green?
I wanted to make. I got a lawn there. I wanted to make it the artificial grass and have a putting green.
That's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I've got no support from home. No support.
Well, no one else plays golf.
No support. No support.
I didn't think you'd be looking for any sort of reinforcement. I thought you'd just get it put in. Everyone else can deal with it.
You're kidding. I am last on the food chain at my place, I'll tell you. I am not in the decision-making process.
Really?
On anything.
Right.
No. No, I am at the bottom of the food chain in my house. Trust me. Trust me.
I think you should just pull rank and just get a putting green.
Yeah. I think golf's beyond me these days. My back's no good. Now that I can see, I might be able to putt better.
Yeah, maybe that's my problem.
Be good.
So your top three favourite venues to watch the footy, Gus? You know what? It can be current venues, or you can even go back to yesteryear if you like.
Oh, yesteryear. Yeah, yesteryear. Cogra Jubilee. I used to love going to Cogra Jubilee to watch my footy.
Yeah.
Sit on the hill out there with all the fans. Sydney Cricket Ground was the big ground for us. That was the special place. Match of the day every Saturday afternoon. All the finals were played at the Sydney Cricket Ground. Even today, even if you get a chance to go there and sit in that old members stand, and like it used to be wonderful back then. I went to old Test matches back in the 60s and 70s, and the wooden seats and the wooden stairs and the green roofs, and it was a great place.
I think I told you my son Jacob played AFL at Henson Park this year.
Did he? Yeah.
And I hadn't been there in so long. You can feel the nostalgia at that place. I actually walked around and took a whole bunch of photos.
Yeah.
But you can feel it.
Yeah.
And that hill, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like you fit. I mean, what's the joke? The crowd's always the same there.
8972.
8972.
We are 8972.
But that's
You know how that started, don't you?
No.
The ground announcer used to sit at a little card table on the sideline with the megaphone giving out the scores,
Yeah.
And this is the thing I love about Henson Park is you can park your car there and sit in your car and watch the football around the outside, So it was a really rainy, dreary, cold afternoon, and there was absolutely no one there. It was a reserve grade game, and so he gets to the point. He said, "And the crowd today is 8972. It's 8 on the hill, 9 in the grandstand, and 72 sitting in the car."
right. Okay. Now I get it. Yeah. What a place to watch the footy. If you could somehow, and I'm sure it'll never happen, although they're rebuilding the grandstand and stuff there now, if you could somehow get an NRL game there just once, like just to experience that hill chockers, it would be fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, great old grounds. I used to love the old Penrith Park. It's really funny because I hated playing at Redfern until I went and played for South. I hated playing at Belmore until I went to play for Canterbury.
Well, that's why they're home ground advantage.
Home ground advantage is just incredible, the old, nostalgia is the old grounds. When I was a kid, I used to go to Cumberland Oval. It was an old rickety dust bowl of a ground. The modern day grounds, Allianz is outstanding. It's absolutely brilliant. Suncorp for Origin, you've got to experience. The ones we've experienced around the country at Perth and Adelaide and those sort of places and Melbourne.
MCG.
They're all great. MCG, coached the first Origin that was played there. 80-odd thousand people turned up that night. Yeah, my favourite places to go and watch. I think Allianz is very special for our game. It's a purpose-built rectangular ground. It's amazing. But I still love my Sunday afternoon at Brookvale Oval or Penrith Park or those sort of areas, the old grounds, Jubilee. Yep. How many's that? What do you want?
About 800. Yeah. That's fine. Let's 3, 2, 1.
What?
Give us 3, 2, 1.
No, I can't.
Okay.
Sydney Cricket Ground, Penrith Park, Jubilee Oval.
Okay. There we go. Thanks, Ampol. There's your power surge for this week. A little break here. We've got NRLW, and then we'll have a look at all the fixtures to come in round 18 of the NRL.
Fans always ask, Lozza, what was the best era of league? And I tell them, nothing beats the line-breaking, flick-passing, goose-stepping, Vegas flying, turbo try-scoring, origin drought-breaking, simply the best era of footy we're in right now. And with more market stats and insights, it's easy to enjoy the best era in footy with the best app in footy.
Tab. We're on.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
NRLW is back this week, kicking off its biggest season yet. Tomorrow night, down in Cronulla. I'm heading down there to call it. Can't wait to call the first game of the year. So another expansion season with 12 teams featuring an NRLW for 2025. The Warriors return and the Bulldogs are playing their inaugural season. We've had a number of high-profile players change clubs throughout the off-season. none bigger than Tamika Upton, leaving Newcastle going back to Brisbane. Arpy Nichols, the Kiwi Ferns fullback, is back at the Warriors. I spoke with Mark Riddell on the weekend, who's the assistant coach at the Dragons NRLW team. They're excited to have Hannah Southwell back in the lineup. Bo Vete Welsh was captain of the inaugural Tigers team, but she's moved to Newcastle to take the role of Tamika Upton. So there's a lot of swapping and changing. I know the Bulldogs have recruited some handy players as well, but that's the nature of the beast as the competition continues to expand. A lot of cross-code stars jumping over into NRL also. So round one, we'll go through the fixtures. NRLW Weekly too. You can catch up on that show and podcast with Ruan and Marley. They're the experts in this field. Thursday, 7:45 kickoff. Sharks play Para to start the season. Sharks $1.40, Para $3.
Yeah, what's the weather going to be? I mean, in the Sutherland Shire, if we've got this wind and rain, crikey,
Bloody horrible. That's what it's going to be.
that'll be a game of two halves.
I think the rain is easing today.
The wind last night
Yeah.
was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Particularly where I'm situated. It was phenomenal, the wind last night. I mean, I don't think you could play in that sort of wind.
Well, I think the forecast is to improve from about now.
Do you reckon?
Well, that's what they're saying. From tomorrow, there's no rain.
No, isn't there?
Yep.
Anyway, okay, yeah.
So the Sharkies play the Eels.
Yeah.
The Dogs play their first game against Newcastle. That's at Accor Stadium at 5:40 on Friday. Dogs are $2.50. Knights are $1.53.
Curtain raiser to the big Bronco Bulldog game,
Excellent.
NRL. So double header. So get out there early to support the girls in their first ever NRLW game.
So Saturday's the big day for NRLW. All these games on 9. Broncos $1.15 play the Tigers $5.50 at Queensland Country Bank Stadium, Townsville. $3.15, the Raiders $1.55, the Dragons $2.45 down in Canberra. Saturday, $5.15, the Cowboys are $2.20, the Titans are $1.67. So there's a double header actually in Townsville. In between that, they head to Canberra. And then Sunday, 11:50 a.m. What about that? It's a morning game. The Roosters are $1.16, the Warriors are $5.20. That's at Allianz. So you can watch all those games, as we say, live and free on 9 and 9 now. Round 18.
Well, that's because the Roosters are playing the Tigers at 2 o'clock at Allianz. That's why it's 11:40. So it's a curtain raiser to the DNRL game on Sunday.
Yep.
Which is great. I think the more they can probably do that, the better it's going to be for the women's game.
Exciting season again on 9. All right, round 18. Let's have a look at all the action now. Obviously, it's a reduced round and reduced with respect to games and also Origin players being unavailable, which is a bit of a fly in the ointment. So we'll start off with Friday night's game at Accor Stadium. The Bulldogs playing the Broncos. Blake Wilson. Anari Tawala's in, Gus. You've waited a while for him.
Yeah, we have. So Anari came to us during the off-season. He was very impressive during the off-season with his training. And then in the last training session before the first trial, he injured his foot. He had one of those Les Frank type injuries and had surgery. So he's come back and he's had a couple of runs in New South Wales Cup. And with the Jacob Carraz and Stephen Crichton heading off to Origin, he gets his chance to debut for the club this week against the Broncos. So that's an important in there. Still a few fellas that have got to pass fitness tests to take their place in this game. But I guess all teams are dealing with that at the moment. And the Broncos show their class and their strength and their depth of talent. That despite all the players they're missing with Origin, they've named a very formidable side as well. So Origin period's always difficult. It's the first time it's really affected us, I guess. We've played all 3 games. We'll play all 3 games without our Origin stars. We never got a bye during the Origin games. So it's been a new experience, but it's one you've got to go through. It's one we're happy to go through because I've always said, 5 or 6 Origin players if you want to be challenging to win Premiership. So got some experience out of it this year. It's been a difficult little period and we'll see how we go.
Yes, so for Brisbane, Selwyn Cobbo's playing fullback. With Reece Walsh, 18th man for Queensland. Dean Mariner also into the back line with Gemmet Shibasaki playing for Queensland. What a story. What an incredible story.
He was a talented kid. I looked at him years and years ago when he was a teenager. I really liked him as a player. And then he had a few injuries and then he went off to Townsville. I think he might have gone to Newcastle. He was all over the place. And
he pretty much had 12 months where he didn't play for anyone.
Yeah.
He had 1 game for South last year.
Well, I just assumed he'd given it away or he'd gone back and played, cup football or whatever. And then all of a sudden he bobbed up at the Broncos. But, yeah, interesting choice for the Origin. Jemahat Shibasaki. Big, strong thing he is.
He's been terrific for the Broncos. All right, Raiders, Dragons, 5:30 p.m. on Saturday at GIO Stadium. So Josh Papali'i coming in means Corey Horsburgh plays prop and Morgan Smithy goes to lock forward. Trey Mooney onto the bench. Simi Sasungi's in the second row because Hudson Young's playing for New South Wales. Geez, the Dragons got smashed up with injuries last week, didn't they? So Holmes is in Origin. Let me just have a look here now. What's he done? Oh, so Sloan comes onto the wing. He's been recalled. Sione Finau's onto the wing. Fatala Mariner, Loko Pasifiki Tonga, Hame Sele and Michael Molo have all come into the 17. Hamish Stewart out concussion. Luciano Leilua with a quad. Nathan Lawson with a shoulder. Toby Couchman with a shoulder are all missing.
Yeah, I'd expect the Raider to roll on in that one.
7:35 Saturday night, the Cowboys, they eked out a win against the Titans and they've got to host the Melbourne Storm. Tom Duffy's been recalled for his first game at halfback since round 2 because Tom Dean's in Origin, but no Cotter, no Robson, obviously. With respect to Melbourne, they're decimated as well. Coates is in Origin, Failongo's injured. So, you know what? Let's not even worry about it. There's that many changes and I think you're going to tip Melbourne anyway.
Well, yeah, it's impossible to know what's going to happen up there. I mean, it'd be a valuable 2 points for the Cowboys to get if they can eke out a win against them, and they're not without a chance, I can tell you.
Okay. I'll get your official tips after.
Okay.
Roosters versus West Tigers.
Yep.
That game is at Allianz. It's the 2:00 game on Sunday. Tom Rodwell makes an NRL debut on the wing with Mark Nwanganitawasi to the centres because Robert Toy is playing Origin. Crichton, Watson, Collins and Lenu are in Origin duty, so Makatoa comes in to play prop. Benai Uelu will play hooker. Blake Steep will start. Egan Butcher returns from concussion to replace Siwa Wong, who's out with a knee. Another debutant in the shape of Max McCarthy on the bench. So they've got mass changes. And Heath Mason suspended for the West Tigers, so Taruva goes to fullback. Staines comes in on the wing. Dewey's playing 5'8". Oh, Coruscant's out. Ugh. And they lost Talon Silva to Parramatta, so they're struggling with a hooker. So Tristan Hope's going to come in. He played in round 1, hasn't been seen since. So the Tigers are obviously been knocked around pretty badly as well.
Yeah, and the Roosters, not just with the rep players, they've got a lot of injury players not playing there as well. So you get a real good sight of their depth and all this young talent that I'm talking about that they've got in the club. And, you know, they've still got to come to the NRL and perform and win games. And, you know, West Tigers on their day can really make you nervous. I'd have to think Rooster prevails, but I'm not going to be surprised by any results this weekend.
We'll be over at Four Pines Brookie for our 4:00 game on Sunday. Manly playing Souths. Manly untroubled by Origin, strangely. And I'm not even going to worry about going through South's lineup. You can just give me a tip.
Yeah, well, Manly at Brookvale Sunday afternoon. Looking forward to that one.
All right. Bulldogs $1.53, Broncos are $2.50 for Friday night. Raiders $1.30, Dragons $3.50 down in Canberra. You with the Raider?
I'm with Raider to continue.
Saturday night, Cowboys $3.40, Storm $1.32.
Yeah, it's not as cut and dried as all that.
Rooster $1.28, Tiger $3.70.
Yeah, don't be surprised.
Manly $1.35, South $3.25.
I'll be extremely surprised if Manly doesn't win.
Great to have you back. It's the first time we've been in this studio for weeks, actually.
It is. Brad did the podcast last week.
6 tackles with Freddy.
6 tackles with Freddy. Excellent.
Didn't tell me he wasn't coaching Australia. We drew out of him that it was a big job. So nothing's organised for the Ashes. Nothing.
When the first day he rang me about considering the job, and I don't want to give away too much, but in the excitement of the possibility of being Australian coach, which is something to aspire to, I sensed a reticence on certain issues that I think he went away and thought about and then decided, no, now's not the time. So, you know, as exciting as it would have been for him, and as much as I'm sure he would love to do it, I could hear it in his voice and some questions that he raised that on reflection he thought, well, no, maybe it's not my job to overcome those odds. So not easy, and particularly your first assignment would be a Kangaroo tour, which would not be an easy assignment either at the back end of the year for all those players. So, So anyway, he's decided not to do it.
Well, if Freddy thinks it's a big job that, it's going to require a lot more application or a lot more logistical application than he might have thought, it's going to be an even bigger job for a bloke who hasn't coached before.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, we've got into this trend of picking ex-players to be coaches of the representative teams, thinking that it's easy to do, and it's not. It's not. I've got my own theory on all of that, but...
But you wouldn't have any issues endorsing maybe the greatest player of all time to coach Australia, would you?
Who?
Cameron Smith.
Yeah, I've got no problem with who coaches them, but it's what the support system you put around them. Their experience is invaluable. As I said, the X's and O's, they can all do it, but it's the experience of, short-term preparations and bringing players together from different clubs and, and how you manage their downtime and how you manage their social interaction and tours and where you're staying and where you're eating and what you're doing in your down. There's a whole range of things to do, and it's got to be financially supported. And I could hear it in Brad's voice. He didn't say as much. He even rang me and talked about who he would ask to be his assistants, and I believe he even had a meeting with one of the ones we spoke about. So, and I won't give him up on who it was, but I think he just laid his head on the pillow one night and he got up the next morning and thought, you know what, no, it's not my time.
Who organises all that logistical stuff?
I don't know.
Because Freddie was talking like it was the coach's job. It can't be the coach's job.
Well, it may be the coach's job because no one else does it. I don't know. I don't know how it works anymore. I don't get involved at that level in any way, shape or form. Used to be the Australian Rugby League. I don't know who does it for the RLC, Australian Rugby League Commission, and I don't know what role New South Wales Rugby League plays in. I just don't know how it works anymore. I'm right out of that loop. So who actually listed controls this? I think most of it lies with the NRL or staff at the NRL, and I don't know who's assigned to do it.
Oh well,
but Brad now works at the NRL, so I think he'd have a fair gauge on how things work in there. And
well, they better make a decision.
Well, it's got to be properly resourced, it's got to be properly funded, and it's got to be supported, and there are a lot of things to organise, and it's just not a matter of jumping on a plane and going over and playing 3 games and getting on the bus to the ground. There's a lot more to it than that.
Interesting. Thanks for that. Good to see you.
That was a long podcast, wasn't it?
It was good, though. In fact, I'm going to go as far to say it's our best of the year.
Really?
Yep. And I know everything about podcasts. We haven't heard from Donald Trump. You're going to have to bring Claude back out of retirement for next week. Claude? Maybe for our Origin preview.
Yeah.
I'll let you know when I hear from our high-profile guest.
I'll get the US president to do a pre-match hype for the
let's do that.
The Origin.
Could you imagine if Donald Trump walked into one of the team dressing rooms as a pre-match?
He's on a roll, Donald.
Oh, man. That's 6 Tackles with Gus for this week. Thanks for your company. We'll chat to you for our Origin preview, which Gus is very much looking forward to on Monday.